Imagine, if you will, stepping into a world long erased by time. A land where ice sheets stretched like endless walls across the horizon, where dense jungles hid predators waiting to strike, and where every dawn carried with it the question, will we survive today? This was not a world built on stone cities or written records. It was a world of wandering tribes, flickering campfires, and fragile rafts daring to cross unknown seas. A world where our ancestors, Homo sapiens, were not the only humans walking the earth. But before we continue, a quick reminder. Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Your voice is part of this story because the history we're about to explore is not distant. It flows in your very veins. Let's set the scene. It is around 100,000 years ago. In Africa, small communities of sapiens live by rivers and savannas, crafting tools with careful hands. They know the shape of the stars, they carry the rhythm of stories told around the fire, and they feel the restless pull of curiosity. That restlessness becomes action. Driven by hunger, by change in climate, or by the simple question of what lies beyond, they set out on journeys that would alter the fate of humanity forever. When they stepped out of Africa, they were not alone. To the west and north, Neanderthals ruled the ice-swept plains of Europe and Western Asia. Powerful, resilient, and deeply intelligent, they thrived for hundreds of thousands of years. Their bones tell us they cared for the sick, buried their dead, and built tools with skill. But far to the east, hidden within the shadows of prehistory, was another branch of the human family, enigmatic, elusive, and unknown until only a few decades ago. The Denisovans. For most of modern science, Denisovans were ghosts. No skulls to display, no skeletons to measure, no tools clearly marked as theirs. Their presence was invisible until a discovery in a cave changed everything. Denisova Cave, high in the Altai Mountains of Siberia. Imagine it, a place of stone and silence, where icy winds beat against the cliffs and snow falls heavy on the pines. Inside the cave, life left traces, scraps of bone, fragments of tools, the char of ancient fires. Wolves once sheltered there, bears too, and humans seeking refuge from the cold. In 2008, among the dust and sediment of this cave, archaeologists found a fragment of a finger bone. Small, fragile, easy to overlook. But inside that bone was a time capsule, ancient DNA that would rewrite the story of our species. When scientists sequenced the DNA, they expected to see the familiar signature of a Neanderthal, or perhaps an early modern human. But the results revealed something different. This was neither Neanderthal nor Homo sapiens. This was something else entirely. A sister lineage, a population that had split from the Neanderthals nearly 400,000 to 600,000 years earlier. The world of human evolution had just grown larger. Denisovans were no longer shadows. They were real, and they had left their mark. From that tiny bone, scientists began to unravel a forgotten history. The Denisovans, it turned out, were not confined to Siberia. Their DNA revealed clues of adaptation, mutations linked to high-altitude survival, to cold resistance, to endurance. Clues that matched traits still alive today. In the bodies of Tibetans, for example, Denisovan genes helped them breathe in the thin, oxygen-starved air of the Himalayas. This meant that Denisovans had roamed far and wide. From the frozen steppes of the north to the warm islands of the south, they left their imprint on the human story. And every time they crossed paths with our ancestors, something remarkable happened. They mixed. Not in violent conquest alone, nor in complete isolation, but in a blending of bloodlines, a merging of survival strategies, a weaving of the human genome into a richer, more complex tapestry. Think about this. Human history was never a straight line. It was never a ladder climbing from primitive to advanced. It was a web, a network of encounters, of unions, of shared nights beneath the same stars. Neanderthals, Denisovans, Homo sapiens. Different but connected, competing but also combining. This was the prehistoric stage, and the Denisovans, though nearly invisible in bones and stones, became giants in our genetic legacy. As modern humans pushed eastward, they carried with them fire, language, and determination. But waiting for them in Southeast Asia and the islands beyond were Denisovan groups already adapted to these lands. Meetings took place, perhaps on beaches lit by moonlight, perhaps deep in forests where rivers met. And from those encounters came children who carried within them a mosaic of traits. Today, the highest percentages of Denisovan ancestry are found not in Siberia, but in island Southeast Asia and Oceania. In populations of Papua New Guinea and Australia, up to 4 to 6% of their genome traces back to these mysterious cousins. That is more Denisovan DNA than Neanderthal DNA in most Europeans. The implication is profound. There were not one, but multiple Denisovan groups. Some in the north, tied to Siberia, others in the south, thriving in tropical islands. Different, yet united in a shared role. They were part of us. And yet, the tragedy of the Denisovans is how little they left behind. Unlike Neanderthals, whose fossils and tools fill museums, Denisovans left almost no trace in the earth. Their bones, exposed to the acids of tropical soils and relentless rains, dissolved before they could fossilize. Their voices, their faces, their lives, gone. All we have are fragments. A tooth here, a jawbone discovered in Tibet. And above all, their DNA, which endures not in caves, but in us. Every heartbeat, every breath we take at high altitudes, every adaptation that whispers of ancient struggles, it is their legacy. A legacy written not in monuments, but in blood. Picture the landscape of prehistoric Asia. Vast steppes stretched into the horizon. Mountains cut the skies, and seas rose and fell with the rhythm of the ice ages. What we see as separate islands today, Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, Australia, were once connected by land bridges, forming the massive continent of Sahul. It was through these shifting corridors that ancient humans moved. And wherever they traveled, they encountered others. The first meetings between Homo sapiens and Denisovans must have been filled with caution. Two groups, alike yet different, staring across the firelight. Did they see strangers? Did they see kin? We will never know their words, but the genetics tell us their actions. They shared more than landscapes. They shared lives. For generations, scholars imagined that modern humans had outcompeted and replaced other human species. But DNA tells another story. It was not only competition, it was connection. Hybrid children were born, carrying the resilience of both lineages, and some of those genetic gifts remain with us today. Take the Sherpas of the Himalayas. Their ability to thrive at breathtaking altitudes where the air is thin and oxygen scarce comes from a Denisovan gene known as EPAS1. Without it, climbing above 4,000 meters would mean exhaustion, collapse, or worse. But with it, Sherpas move through the peaks as if born for the clouds. This is no coincidence. It is prehistory written in physiology. Or look to Southeast Asia, where the Bajau people, often called sea nomads, dive beneath the waves for minutes at a time, hunting fish and gathering food. Their enlarged spleens, which store oxygen-rich blood, may carry Denisovan echoes, adaptations that once helped ancient humans survive in coastal and island environments. Each of these stories is a bridge between the unknown lives of Denisovans and our own. But the Denisovans were not the only humans our ancestors met. On the islands of Flores lived the small-bodied Homo floresiensis, the hobbits of human prehistory, standing barely a meter tall. In the Philippines, Homo luzonensis carried a strange mixture of primitive and modern traits, their curved fingers hinting at a life partly in the trees. These super-archaic humans, as scientists call them, were evolutionary experiments of their own. Yet, curiously, their DNA is absent in us. Unlike Denisovans and Neanderthals, their legacy left no imprint on modern genomes. Why? Perhaps their numbers were too small, their genetic distance too great, or their meetings with sapiens too fleeting. But Denisovans were different. They were close enough, both genetically and geographically, for their story to become entwined with ours. Let us return to one of the great puzzles, the Ngandong skulls of Java. Discovered in the 1930s along the banks of the Solo River, 12 skulls emerged from the layers of earth. They were strange, larger-brained than Homo erectus, but with archaic features not quite sapiens. For decades, their identity baffled researchers. Were they late surviving Homo erectus? Were they hybrids, or something else entirely? Now, with the lens of genetics and the Denisovan puzzle, some believe these skulls may represent a southern branch of the Denisovans. Imagine it. On the floodplains of ancient Java, groups of Denisovans mingling with remnants of Homo erectus, producing offspring with traits that blurred the lines between categories. Their survival into the last 100,000 years makes them not relics, but neighbors of early sapiens. And then there is the Dragon Man skull from China, massive, with flat cheekbones and large teeth, dated to around 146,000 years ago. Some call it Homo longi, a new species. Others suspect it too belongs within the Denisovan spectrum. If so, it reveals how diverse and widespread Denisovans truly were. Far from a single group, they were a patchwork of populations scattered across Eurasia. Think of it this way. Human evolution was not a tree with neat branches. It was a thicket, tangled and interwoven, with branches splitting, crossing, and rejoining. Denisovans in the north, Denisovans in the south, Neanderthals in the west, Homo sapiens weaving through them all. At times, they clashed. At times, they shared fires, but always they left marks upon one another. And as sapiens spread further east, another chapter unfolded. They reached Sahul, the ancient landmass that is today Australia and New Guinea. This was not an easy journey. Sea levels were lower, but even then, stretches of open water separated islands. Crossing them required ingenuity, rafts crafted from bamboo, sails shaped by animal skins, knowledge of the tides and stars. Yet they did it. By at least 50,000 years ago, humans had set foot in Australia. And there, genetic studies reveal they carried with them a gift from the Denisovans. Up to 6% of their DNA comes from these mysterious ancestors, higher than anywhere else in the world. It is as if the Denisovans themselves had prepared the way, their genes giving sapiens the resilience to thrive in new, demanding landscapes. But what became of the Denisovans themselves? Why did they vanish, leaving only whispers in our blood? The answers are uncertain. Perhaps they were absorbed, their identity fading into ours with each new generation. Perhaps climate shifts fractured their habitats, isolating groups until their numbers dwindled. Or perhaps competition against sapiens, against Neanderthals, against the unforgiving environment, simply overwhelmed them. What is certain is this: they did not disappear entirely. They live on in fragments of DNA scattered across humanity. Their story is not one of extinction, but of transformation. Consider this. When you breathe easily at high altitudes, when you adapt to harsh environments, when your body resists certain diseases, it may be because of them. Denisovans, forgotten by history, but remembered by ourselves. They were not outsiders. They were part of us. And through them, our species became stronger,